Hello, welcome to Conservative Corner. It's good to have you as our audience again, and we appreciate your being here. We are a monthly cable access TV show out of Newton, Massachusetts, and we focus on issues that are pertinent to, shall we say, the non-liberal sector of our society. In that, given that our state, our Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is the most liberal state in the United States, and Newton and the area is pretty much ground zero for liberalism. While we certainly don't necessarily disdain our liberal colleagues, we feel as though we should have an equal say in both the politics of our state and our city and the country in general. With that being said, we approach issues from a perspective that you may not necessarily hear in the Boston Globe and in the very liberal media, TV news and otherwise, and they're all pretty much the same, as you know, especially locally. So that being said, it's obvious that we are in the midst of a really historical presidential election year. And this hasn't been done in probably about 150 years, I believe, in that we have a former president who lost an election and is coming back to run again. And the last time that was done was in the 1870s with Grover Cleveland, who did succeed in coming back and winning an election against the rival who defeated him, which I believe was Benjamin Harrison. We are in the midst of this election, and when I say we, I mean the Massachusetts Trump campaign. Now you may say or speculate, why do we have a Massachusetts Trump campaign? Well, it's very simple, because we believe that not everyone is going to march lockstep to the polls to vote for Joe Biden and all the affiliated Democrats. We believe that people want an alternative voice and people want a new president. And to that end, we in the Massachusetts Trump campaign are endeavoring to put Donald Trump back into the White House. Now, obviously at this time, which is February 26th, where this recording is happening, there is still another candidate in play, and that, of course, is Nikki Haley. That may change within a few weeks, or by the time that this show has run its course within a month. Hopefully it will. But we anticipate that Donald Trump will be the nominee. To that end, we have with us a very important guest tonight, and I'm very pleased to have her with us. And that, of course, is Farah Carrier. Now, Farah, you are originally from Texas, and you're a former police officer. And you were a Republican activist there in Texas, and you moved up to Massachusetts, to the Boston area, where you work in the legal field, and you're completing your law degree here as well. And you moved here 2 years ago. And you came highly recommended to us. When I say us, I mean the Massachusetts Trump campaign, to head up a coalition that's called Black Voices for Trump. Now, I am the director of coalitions for the Trump campaign in Massachusetts, and I've been told soon to be New England as well. But and we put together coalitions, and they can run from anything from Italians for Trump to Black Voices for Trump, et cetera, et cetera. And we have Veterans for Trump and Students for Trump. And I was very pleased when you came our way to head up Black Voices for Trump, because it's a very, very important coalition nationwide, and we did also have it last time. And the purpose of any coalition is try to expand the network, shall we say, for our election prospects to re-elect Donald Trump president, which is why we have these. When we have a coalition, we hope that those who are in the coalition, running the coalitions, will expand out to the people within their group, and also in particular, if it's, say, Armenians, they hopefully expand to the churches. Italians, Ginny Gardner, who's in the studio, is the head of Italians for Trump, expand to the Italian social groups. And in your case, as Black Voices for Trump, you would have that role here in Massachusetts, and I would venture to guess also in New England. So it's wonderful that you're doing this, and we commend you for accepting this. And you have a very long resume working with Republicans and being a Republican leader in your original hometown of Houston, where you were born and raised. And you came to us, much to our delight, in order to, and then by design, or maybe by default, you came to us, and now you're heading up Black Voices for Trump. Now, I think that given that we're in a very liberal state and in a very liberal area in the Newton, Brookline, Wellesley area, I think that our viewers are really fascinated by you, merely because you are the head of Black Voices for Trump in Massachusetts. So if you could explain to people, if you would, given that the black voter turnout for Donald Trump, for any Republican candidate, is always a minority, just as they are with Jews and, say, Puerto Ricans and other groups. And yet you are a proud Republican, you're a staunch Republican, and you're a staunch Trump supporter. Please take as much time as you like and tell us how you got to be this way. And I mean, I've heard your story and it's fascinating, but for the viewers at home.
Sure. Well, as you said, my name is Farrah Carrier. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and I moved here in September of 2020 to go to law school. I was not ready for the level of political resistance that I have experienced since I've lived here from the Democrat side, because that's just not a phenomenon that we have in Texas. With Texas, we have, a good balance between Republicans and Democrats, which allows Texans to at least talk about.
You actually have
issues.
Diversity of opinion in Texas.
Yes, we actually have diversity of opinion. So we're able to have really good policy debates. But what's discouraging to me here in Massachusetts is that all of the 9 elected congressmen are Democrats. And I know that not everyone in the state of Massachusetts is a Democrat. So it's unfortunate, and I would certainly be excited, honored, and thrilled to be a part of continuing our work as Black Voices, the Coalition of Black Voices for Trump, after the election, and helping local candidates in the Commonwealth that are Republican get elected, because I truly believe that politics starts at the local level. And I think Massachusetts is ripe for Republicans to come out now. And whether they come out for Trump or whether they come out as a Republican or however they want to come out as like a moderate conservative, whatever label makes them comfortable, I think they should come out now, because the country needs all the patriots it can get. And those that are supporting Donald Trump, the Democrats have been very strategic in trying to separate traditional Republicans from, quote, MAGA Republicans. But I really don't see a difference, because if you are a Republican, like I've been since 2001, I have an appreciation for my citizenship as an American, and I'm very patriotic about being an American. And anyone that knows me knows that I am not the one to pull a race card. I was fortunate to have a mother and a grandmother and family members before me who sacrificed, who gave their lives for the right to vote and for the right to be treated as an equal human being in this country. So by the time I came in, my mother encouraged me very much to have my own free-thinking mindset. Although she's a staunch Democrat to this day, she's always been very supportive of me and my Republican ideology. And I blame her for it. I'm like, Mom, you made me get a job when I was 16. You raised a Republican. Sorry. But I've realized over the years, even with the problems that the party has had since I joined it in 2001, that what we stand for as Republicans is not just law and order, but we stand for protecting our country. We stand for the values our country was founded on. The Boston Tea Party, the revolt about the taxes, and then getting away from the Queen and the King, and we didn't want a monarchy. We didn't want our government taking our money. We didn't want dictators, kings, and queens. We wanted to be free. And what's interesting about the Republican Party is that the first Republicans were blacks. Because right after Reconstruction,
That's right.
right after slavery ended in Reconstruction, when blacks were able to participate in the Republican process, they participated as Republicans.
That's right.
Because when they read the Constitution that was signed by our founding fathers, it was clear to them that this is a country for everyone, including them. And that sentiment has carried on throughout history prime example being Martin Luther King, who was also a Republican.
He was.
And he understood that the way to real change is through the legislative process. It's through being patient and going through the begrudging and slow process of getting laws changed. Because you can protest and complain all you want, but if there's no law to protect you in this country, then you're just out there protesting. And I'm not saying protests are bad, because the protesting that occurred in the 1960s was obviously very useful, and it had its place and its purpose. And everything that happened before I was born has allowed me to be the out and proud Republican Black female that I am. you
That's
know?
wonderful.
And since I've been here, I actually, when I moved here, I first moved to Brookline. So I'm familiar with this area, and I lived in Coolidge Corner. And I'd only been here a month in 2020, and I did a Donald Trump standout at Beacon and Harvard Ave.
That's brave.
Yes. I went and found like 6 or 7 young Black college students from Boston University and Boston College, and I got us t-shirts that said, Blacks don't have to vote Democrat.
Wow.
Yes.
Boy, is that brave.
Yes,
That
and-
must have been such a
yes.
shock.
Yes.
And you're right in ground zero of
Right.
liberalism in the area.
Right, and we had counter protesters that were young white women college age that had commandeered some cardboard and a black magic marker and wrote BLM on it.
Oh, my
and they were
God.
calling us racist.
They're calling you racist.
They're calling us racist, the black people.
Yeah.
They're calling us racist because we support Donald Trump.
Because you're not voting and you're not supporting
Right.
their liberal Democrat politicians.
I can truly say that was a first for me.
Wow. Well, coming from Texas,
Right.
it's a different world here.
Right, but you know, I just love my country, and I love this land that has given me every opportunity and every success that I've worked for and earned. I very much agreed with the abolition of affirmative action, because in Texas we're capitalists. You know, we don't depend on the government for anything. So if you want a house, you better get a job. You know, because there ain't going to be a handout for you. There's not going to be a subsidy. There's not going to be some special minority-based program. If you want a house, you got to do what everyone else did, which is get a job, save your money, and get your house. And with that work ethic that was instilled in me by my mother, and also being a Southerner and especially being Texan, you know, I've been able to accomplish the things that I have because I don't feel like a victim. I don't feel as if because of my race and gender, I am somehow behind the starting line, because that has not been my experience. Everything I've sought out to accomplish, I've been able to do it through hard work, sacrifice, lots of crying nights, and going hungry and not doing the things I want to do, and etc. So, and that's just another way of saying, you know, a lot of Black people say, well, white people want us to just pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and, you know, go get better. And conceptually, that's exactly how I lived my life. But I wasn't doing it with the motivation that I was somehow disadvantaged. And I'm saying all that to say that, you know, the notion that race relations in this country are very bad, I absolutely disagree with. Because I would ask any Black person today in 2024 if they could survive the Jim Crow era, the incidents that did trigger the civil rights movement. Could they survive being a slave? Could they survive not knowing who they are or what their value is or what their worth is post-slavery, and just being told, okay, you're free, get out, you know, like, and not being able to read and not knowing, you know, anything else except, you know, manual labor skills. I mean, I would submit to the Black community that we are much more stronger and conservative than we give ourselves credit for. In our community, family values are a top priority. You know, we believe in taking care of our elderly parents. You know, we believe in having babies. And, you know, the Black community tends to be a very Christian community as well. And it always confuses me sometimes that, you know, we can be so committed to going to church and our families, et cetera, but we allow a government to interfere in our lives, run our lives on the false pretense that they're helping us. And it's like, we don't need your help, first of all. Y'all need our help. You know, the history of this country is that it would not have been built but for the labor and the deaths of a lot of black people that were brought here. And interesting enough, you know, like slavery times, the blacks had to eat the vegetables and what was left on the land because the masters would eat the pork and the beef and everything. So they got all the type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. And then the slaves, they were in tip-top shape. And it's interesting to me now how liberal companies have created a shift in nutrition where now you can't even afford to be a vegetarian. You know, it's easier to go get processed food or, you know, unhealthy food. And who's getting that? People who don't have money. And who tends to be the groups that don't have money? Blacks and browns, you know? So, you know, as I experience life and, you know, recognize the constant lie that is the Democratic platform, I become more and more passionate about not only educating my community, but also my fellow patriots that are Caucasian. I try to shatter the notion that, you know, this concept of white guilt is legit. You know, you weren't a slaveholder, you didn't own any slaves, and maybe if you went back into your family history, there was some of that, but why would I judge you, Tom, as a person based on what your ancestors did or did not do? It's just not fair. And with the advent of critical racism, I'm not going to call it the advent because I never knew what it was until I moved here. But I think that that's just another measure of control where, you know, these liberal policies are trying to brainwash black and brown students into thinking that they're victims and that they need assistance and that they were born behind the 8 ball and without the opportunity to compete in our society. And the reason for that is because of slavery and because of, you know, the necessity for affirmative action. And, you know, don't you remember how happy everybody was when Obama was elected? Like, it's unprecedented. And it's just not right. It's really just not right because black people, the reason why both parties go after our vote is because voting in the black community is a serious deal. We recognize more than many others of the sacrifices that our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents made for us to even be able to vote, to have a voice in the ballot booth. So even if you're staunch Democrat black families and, you know, blacks that are Republican, we take our right to vote as a duty. And any political consultant who's been around as long as I have knows that, which is why you see national candidates always pandering to the black vote. Because where a huge block of whites or Hispanics or people of other communities may not come out and vote, DC, the Republican National Convention, the Democratic National Convention, they know based on the data that the black vote can change elections. So that's why they're always pandering to us. And one of the things I love about Donald Trump was in 2017 when he said, you know, I'm going to do this for the blacks anyway, even though I know they're not going to vote for me, you know, and what he was doing was giving historically black colleges and universities billions of dollars. And a lot of politicians make promises, you know, that they never keep, you know, but so when Donald Trump was on the campaign trail in 2016 saying that he was going to give billions of dollars to the HBCUs, I was like, sounds nice, but we'll see.
What's the HBCU?
Oh, a historically black college and university. So when Donald Trump said, I'm giving all this money to the HBCUs, a lot of black people were like, okay, well, yeah, we don't believe you. But I happened to be a student at Texas Southern University from 2018 to 2019. And that's at HBCU in Houston, Texas, and one of the older ones, actually. And I saw firsthand with my own eyes the funding that came in from the Trump administration, where we got brand new parking garages, we got brand new cafeterias, we had, like, our library was upgraded, and that was all from the funding that Donald Trump promised to give not only us, but other HBCUs in this country. So I personally experienced that Donald Trump will do what he says he's going to do. I also love the fact that he, helped, get the First Step Act signed into law.
And what is that?
The First Step Act is a federal law that releases nonviolent offenders from federal prisons. So it can't be applied in states and state prisons, but at least in federal prison, if you're a nonviolent offender, and I believe one of the provisions is if you're a first-time offender too, the federal government is not going to keep you in jail. So Trump did that to alleviate the burden of housing prisoners by the federal government, because it costs a lot of money to feed somebody 3 times a day and make sure they shower. That's expensive. So I like that Trump is always governing from a perspective of fiscal responsibility, or having a business mindset. Like, how does this look, and how much is this going to hurt America in their pocketbooks? And I think he's been very committed to that since he came down that escalator.
And also, where you come from, Texas, Texas is really at ground zero for the whole assault on the U.S. borders from Mexico and beyond. And so they're coming in swarms, and the border is open. There is no border. There is no border control at all, and everybody knows it. And so and now obviously you're here, and we're about as far from Texas as you can get, except for Maine. And now what we're seeing is that it's no longer in Texas where you have the illegals coming in. Well, they have to go somewhere, and they all can't stay in Texas. And so now they're coming here. We've seen them come into Newton. We've seen them come into Roxbury. And one of the things that was really, really offensive, if not heartbreaking, is when in Roxbury, for example, the ultra-liberal mayor of Boston and the ultra-liberal, the even more liberal governor of the Commonwealth, decided to take over one of the largest community centers in the Boston area in Roxbury, and they took it away from the kids, and especially the high school kids who need a place to go after they finish school in the daytime, and they put all the illegals in there. And then they did the same thing in Newton, where it's in a Catholic community. It's in a Catholic building run by a church, and it was a battered women's shelter. So what did they do? They took that over, and they're putting in the illegals there. So now we're faced with the crisis of the illegals coming here, and so because so many of them are coming here, millions upon millions, and it's not going to end anytime soon. It will, even if Donald Trump gets elected president, it's still going to be going on right on, I think, until the last day, which is January 20th of next year, in which case you could have 1 million or 2 more that will come here, and they'll be dispersed into states like this. But, what's interesting is and especially New York has been completely overrun by illegals. And when you look at in New York City, for example, and you look at, shall we say, some of the neighborhoods that aren't really up to par, as the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, like Harlem, for example, the Bronx. So then they put the illegals in there. And then all the resources go to helping the illegals. And then eventually these illegals are going to come out and maybe, hopefully, they'll want jobs. So now you have these very low-end people coming in, and they're competing for jobs within the urban areas of the country. And so, in my mind, and I think in the mind of many others, is that when you have, for example, so many illegals coming in, they're competing, they eventually will compete. They're first competing for government resources. Second, they will compete in the job market. And they're going to be competing against Hispanics and blacks and whites. They're going to be competing all around. And God help us if we have an economic downturn and we have massive unemployment. And then we have all these illegals that are pretty much on the dole and competing for the resources and the jobs that we have. So it stands to reason that in a community like the black community, which has historically voted Democrat, for whatever reason, I like to think that they're coming out of that shell, that they would be more inclined to vote Republican. And the question is, how do we get them to vote Republican?
Well, the answer is that shift is already occurring in large numbers that liberal media refuses to acknowledge. I mean, they can't ignore it, so they have to report that there is an increase in black voters supporting Donald Trump, but they never go into detail as to why. Instead, they just criticize why blacks are starting to support Donald Trump. But the reason why is because, at least I can tell you from my experience in Houston, there's a street called West Park Drive, which is at and it crosses over US Highway 59, and it's in Southwest Houston. And every Saturday morning, you could drive by this corner of the city, and you would see a lot of illegal immigrants that took over blocks and blocks of the area, and they would be there between like 4 and 6 o'clock in the morning, and they would wait on people coming in trucks so they can hop in the back of the truck and then get paid for a day. I feel that at least in Texas, the problem is on both sides, because you have the small businesses who, for whatever reason, don't want to hire legal people. You have your housewife who just wants to maybe redo a part of her garage and knows that she can get it done cheaper if she goes and picks up a couple of people from West Park and 59 rather than paying people at Home Depot, and their expert technicians to do the job. So we can't just blame the migrants for coming in, because when they come in, at least what I've seen in Texas, it's not like they're not getting what they need. They are getting jobs, even if they're just paying for it under the table. But they do impact the resources of the state.
Of course
and
they
that
do.
is what Massachusetts, New York, Chicago, and other places are starting to see firsthand.
Now, do you expect, so you expect the black vote for Donald Trump for the Republican ticket will be much higher this time around?
Yes, absolutely.
Good, excellent. I want to, this show goes very fast, and it's the fastest 30 minutes in TV, as they say. But I want to remind people that March 5th is the Republican primary.
Yep.
Please get out and vote. You can, I believe mail-in voting is still, absentee voting is still going on. And go to the polls on March 5th. And on a point of personal privilege, I am running for re-election to be your state committee man from this district, which includes Newton, Wellesley, and Brookline. And I would appreciate your support and vote. I've been in this role for 7 years, and I'd like to continue. And on March 5th, we are going to have our Trump Victory Party at the Inn at Bay Point in Quincy. It's going to be a wonderful event. I've already been contacted by the media. They're going to be there, and we look forward to, if you can, come there and be with us. March 5th is Super Tuesday. I believe that there's elections in 12 states. We anticipate, but we're not sure, that Nikki Haley will drop out of the race because, after all, she did not win her native South Carolina, which is very unusual, where you can't win your own state.
Yeah,
But nevertheless, and we've been told she's actually coming to the Needham Sheraton on March 2nd. Now, a lot of this census program does go for months, so a lot of this will be a moot point within a week or so. But again, it's the fastest 30 minutes in TV, and we're very glad that you came here.
Can I make just one closing point?
Yes, please, by all means.
I would like to tell people that one of the things I've experienced since I moved here is a fear by Republicans to state that they're Republican, and an even greater fear to state that they support Donald Trump. I want to encourage all of your viewers, if you are a Republican, regardless of the candidate that you support, be proud of your political party. There is not a reason to be afraid. We have a First Amendment. We are free individuals. We are not in China. We are not a communist government. We should be free to say who we want to support and who we want to vote for.
Spoken as a true Texan. Thank you for coming to
Okay,
Massachusetts.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.